This Defeating Adventism video may be an annual event. At least I think so at this point. This is a good time to make it. The Hanukkah celebration is going to begin in about 3 days from now, and it's going to continue for 8 days past that. Because Hanukkah is so significant, and what it symbolizes, at least in terms of Seventh-day Adventism, is that it destroys and refutes the investigative judgment. Hanukkah, and you can look at the graphic here, it's an annual reminder to every Seventh-day Adventist that the temple was cleansed from the desolation caused by Antiochus Epiphanes, and it was cleansed in 164 BC. And you can kind of see a 14th century, 600-year-old painting there, as well as a coin depicting, you can see Antiochus Epiphanes, as well as his god holding up another god, Nike, on the back of it there. And that the significance of Hanukkah is that Daniel 8:14 was fulfilled. Hanukkah is a reminder that the book of Maccabees records this historical event. So let me just say this as a reminder about Maccabees and how significant that is. In Ellen White's Big Bible is the Apocrypha. In 1849, in a vision, Ellen White described her Big Bible as the Word of God. Ellen White, in effect, just canonized the Apocrypha for us. Thank you very much, Ellen White. So with that in mind, in Ellen White's Big Bible, that Joseph Teal published in 1822, is the book of Maccabees. Let's go and look at 1 Maccabees 4:52. Just look at the red underlined text here. 1 Maccabees 4:52. Now on the 5 and 25th day of the 9th month, which is called Cheslu. Look at verse 53. And what? Offered sacrifice according to the law upon the new altar of burnt offerings. Why do you got a new altar? Because in verse 54 it says what? Look at what time and what day the heathen had profaned it. They cleansed the temple. They built a new altar. Verse 55, that all the people fell on their faces, worshiping and praising the God of heaven, he who had given them success. And so they kept the dedication of the altar for 8 days. Let's go to 2 Maccabees. You can see 10:3. And having cleansed the altar, they made another altar. That's what you just saw. Look at verse 6. And they kept 8 days with gladness, as in the feast of the tabernacles. Verse 8 here. Let's keep reading down. They ordained, and also by a common statute and decree, that every year those should be kept, the whole nation of the Jews. So we see here that Hanukkah is an annual event where the nation of Israel is going to keep this festival. And you know what? They did. Look at John chapter 10, verse 22 and 23. And what we're going to see here is, at the time of the Feast of Dedication took place in Jerusalem, it was winter, and Jesus was walking in the temple in the colonnade. And you can see in verse 25, and Jesus answered them, I told you, you do not believe. Jesus is in the colonnade of Solomon, in the temple area, proclaiming who he is. The Jews are there asking him, tell us, who are you? And he says, look, I told you, and you don't believe. And if you keep reading down John chapter 10, they get to the point where they want to stone him. And Jesus says, why do you want to stone me? And they said, because you, a mere man, claim to be God. He claimed it right there, his messiahship, but they still rejected him. But what was Jesus and all the nation of Israel, and the disciples are with Jesus too, because they had just come from the Feast of the Tabernacles. From John chapter 7 and on is Feast of the Tabernacles. So you can see that relationship. What were they all doing there? They were celebrating the cleansing of the temple. The defeat by the Maccabean revolt in 164 BC, who cleansed the temple from Antiochus Epiphanes and said, you saw it in Maccabees, we're going to have an 8-day celebration, the Festival of Lights, Hanukkah, the Feast of Dedication. And there it is. Everybody knew what they were there celebrating because they had been keeping it since 164 BC. Now, I want you to think about this. This is significant. The Maccabean revolt was the last great deliverance of the nation of Israel. And what do we have now? At the celebration of the Maccabean revolt, we got Christ, who is truly the last great deliverance of the nation of Israel, at least to those who will accept him. And we can see if you keep reading John 10, there's many who don't. Of course, there are many who do, and those are called his disciples too, in one case, but to the nation of Israel. Hanukkah celebrates the restoration of the temple and the time to give thanks to God. So Christ is going to accomplish, and I want you to look here in John 2:18. He's going to accomplish what the Maccabean revolt tried to accomplish, we could say, and that's the restoration of the temple. But Christ is the temple. Look in John 2:18 and 2:19. Christ says what? Destroy this temple in 3 days, I will raise it up. And the temple was what? Not a building, but in verse 21, he was speaking of the temple of his body. So Christ is the temple who's never going to be destroyed. So there, if you just think about what's going on in John chapter 10 at this Feast of Hanukkah, it is full of prophetic fulfillment and symbolism. Christ is the temple who will never be destroyed. And here they are, the nation of Israel is celebrating the deliverance of the nation of Israel. But here's Christ who's there. He is the deliverer of the nation of Israel. And it's just phenomenal when you think about it. Shortly after Christ appears in John chapter 10 at this event is, well, the crucifixion. But then shortly after that is Peter in Acts 3:11. And let's look here. Look at Acts 3:11. And where does this scene take place? In the portico called Solomon. Verse 13. Peter says what? The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, the God of our fathers, glorified his servant Jesus, whom you delivered over and denied in the presence of Pilate when he had decided to release him. So what we have here in Acts 3:11, almost within a matter of just, I don't know what could be, weeks, here is Christ at the Hanukkah celebration, who is the true temple, the true deliverer of the nation of Israel. When the religious leaders ask him, tell us who you are, he says, I already told you, but you don't believe me. And then we have the crucifixion. And we have Peter coming back to the very same place, proclaiming that very same Christ who was standing there. And I want to say, though I don't know, I want to say that some of the people in attendance listening to Peter were also in attendance at the Hanukkah celebration and heard Jesus proclaim who he was and rejected him there. And now Peter's there preaching that very same Christ. Oh, this is just phenomenal. Hanukkah, like I said, points to the cleansing of the temple and the deliverance of the nation of Israel. Jesus is the fulfillment of Hanukkah. He is the deliverance of the nation of Israel. Hanukkah, sad to say, the celebration today is a rejection of the Messiah. There truly is no need to celebrate Hanukkah because the last great deliverance has already occurred. And we saw it there in John chapter 10. The temple was cleansed. Daniel 8:14, fulfilled. And Jesus paid the price for sin, John 19:30, when he said, it is finished. So Seventh-day Adventists, as you shop this season, and you're in the grocery food stores, or you're in shopping stores, and you see Hanukkah food and Hanukkah gifts, I want you to realize this is a reminder to you that the temple has been cleansed. It was cleansed in 164 BC during the Maccabean revolt, and this celebration of Hanukkah, which should not be taking place, but does, that is taking place, is a refutation of your investigative judgment. The temple was cleansed. The investigative judgment is a story of a Jesus and an event that does not exist.